In the face of unprecedented global headwinds, families, pensioners, businesses, teachers, nurses, and many others are worried about the future. So today, we deliver a plan to tackle the cost of living crisis and rebuild our economy. Our priorities are stability, growth, and public services. We also protect the vulnerable, because to be British is to be compassionate, and this is a compassionate Conservative government. We are not alone in facing these problems, but today we respond to an international crisis with British values. We are honest about the challenges, and we are fair in our solutions. Yes, we take difficult decisions to tackle inflation and keep mortgage rates down. But our plan also leads to a shallower downturn, lower energy bills, higher growth, and a stronger NHS and education system. Three priorities then today: stability, growth, and public services. I start with stability. Mr. Speaker, high inflation is the enemy of stability. It means higher mortgage rates, more expensive food and fuel bills, businesses failing and unemployment rising. It erodes savings, causes industrial unrest and cuts funding for public services. It hurts the poorest the most and eats away at the trust upon which a strong society is built. The Office for Budget Responsibility confirms global factors are the primary cause of current inflation. Most countries are still dealing with the fallout from a once-in-a-century pandemic. The furlough scheme, the vaccine rollout, and the response of the NHS did our country proud, but they all have to be paid for. The lasting impact on supply chains has made goods more expensive and fueled inflation, and this has been worsened by a made-in-Russia energy crisis. Putin's war in Ukraine has caused wholesale gas and electricity prices to rise to 8 times their historic average. Inflation is high here, but higher in Germany, the Netherlands, and Italy. Interest rates have risen here, but faster in the US, Canada, and New Zealand. Growth forecasts have fallen here, but fallen further in Germany. The International Monetary Fund expects 1/3 of the world's economy to be in recession this year or next. So the Bank of England, which has done an outstanding job since its independence, now has my wholehearted support in its mission to defeat inflation. And I today confirm we will not change its remit. But we need fiscal and monetary policy to work together. And that means the government and the bank working in lockstep. It means, in particular, giving the world confidence in our ability to pay our debts. British families make sacrifices every day to live within their means, and so too must their government, because the United Kingdom will always pay its way. I understand the motivation of my predecessor's mini-budget, and he was correct. He was correct to identify growth as a priority. But unfunded tax cuts are as risky as unfunded spending, which is why we reversed the planned measures. As a result, government borrowing has fallen, the pound has strengthened, and the OBR says today that the lower interest rates generated by the government's actions are already benefiting our economy and public finances. But, Mr. Speaker, credibility cannot be taken for granted. And yesterday's inflation figures show we must continue a relentless fight to bring it down, including a rock-solid commitment to rebuild our public finances. Richard Hughes and his team at the OBR today lay out starkly the impact of global headwinds on the UK economy, and I'm enormously grateful to him and his team for their thorough work. The OBR forecast the UK's inflation rate to be 9.1% this year and 7.4% next year. They confirm that our actions today help inflation to fall sharply from the middle of next year. They also judge that the UK, like other countries, is now in recession. Overall this year, the economy is still forecast to grow by 4.2%. GDP then falls in 2023 by 1.4%, before rising by 1.3%, 2.6% and 2.7% in the following 3 years. The OBR says higher energy prices explain the majority of the downward revision in cumulative growth since March. They also expect a rise in unemployment from 3.6% today to 4.9% in 2024, before falling to 4.1%. Today's decisions mean that over the next 5 years, borrowing is more than halved. This year, we're forecast to borrow 7.1% of GDP, or £177 billion. Next year, 5.5% of GDP, or £140 billion. Then by 2027-28, it falls to 2.4% of GDP, or £69 billion. As a result, underlying debt as a percentage of GDP starts to fall from a peak of 97.6% in 2025-6 to 97.3% in 27-28. I also confirmed 2 new fiscal rules. The first is that underlying debt must fall as a percentage of GDP by the 5th year of a rolling 5-year period. The second, that public sector borrowing over the same period must be below 3% of GDP. And the plan I'm announcing today meets both rules. Today's statement delivers a consolidation of £55 billion and means inflation and interest rates end up significantly lower. We achieve this, Mr. Speaker, in a balanced way. In the short term, as growth slows and unemployment rises, we will use fiscal policy to support the economy. The OBR confirm that because of our plans, the recession is shallower and inflation is reduced. Unemployment is also lower, with about 70,000 jobs saved as a result of our decisions today. Then, once growth returns, we increase the pace of consolidation to get debt falling. This further reduces the pressure on the bank to raise interest rates, because as Conservatives, we do not leave our debts to the next generation. Mr. Speaker, this is a balanced path to stability, tackling inflation to reduce the cost of living and protect pensioner savings whilst supporting the economy on a path to growth. But it means taking difficult decisions. Anyone who says there are easy answers is not being straight with the British people. Some argue for spending cuts, but that would not be compatible with high-quality public services. Others say savings should be found by increasing taxes, but Conservatives know that high-tax economies damage enterprise and erode freedom. We want low taxes and sound money, but Conservatives know sound money has to come first, because inflation eats away at the pound in people's pockets even more insidiously than taxes. So with just under half of the £55 billion consolidation coming from tax and just over half from spending, this is a balanced plan for stability.